listeners, welcome to our brand new third season of Mind Your Business podcast. My name is Mia Gomez.
My name is Carlos Mora, and we're the hosts of this podcast. We want to give a special shout out to Studio G, powered by the Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce, Blackstone Launchpad, and to all of your listeners that we love you and we thank you to be here.
In today's episode, we have a very special guest, Jon Avila, with us. He will be talking about his entrepreneurial lifestyle and how he balances his personal life while being a graduate student as well.
So, hey, Jon, let me start with the first question. How are you?
I am doing very well, Carlos. I am doing so well that I am in good company with my fellow colleagues at the Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce. What I think we promote here is this entrepreneurial acumen that I'm just happy to be a part of. And in today's chat, my goal is to share just the little events that have occurred that promote entrepreneurial development and acumen. And it's just more of that personal story. But I'm doing fine, and I hope you're doing well, Carlos, and I hope you're also doing well, Mia. It's really great to enter into this conversation. I'm just happy to be here on the show.
We're really happy to have you back.
And even though we know you from a while now, there are some people that don't know what you study, what are your hobbies, and tell us a little about yourself.
I am currently studying a master's in business administration here at the University of Texas at El Paso. Prior to this, I studied at the University of Houston, and I received a double major in entrepreneurship and marketing. Specifically for the entrepreneurship degree, it was earned through the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship, which is a competitive 3-semester program that I attribute a lot of my current, I would say, drive and ambition, thanks to those individuals that I met in the class that I was a part of. So that's my academic angle or my academic life. When it comes to hobbies, I have a few hobbies. I do consider myself a homebody, so nothing in the hobbies that are just too crazy. I enjoy running. Additionally, I enjoy just not even competitive, but more casual martial arts like boxing, and now I'm in a karate class, and it's kicking my butt. But I think there's a benefit to that. There's a hobby in that also, but I also enjoy ingestion for the word of continuous content, understanding of what's happening around the city, what's happening in the entrepreneurial communities in Houston and Austin. I consider that a very strong hobby to where I want to keep well informed of what's occurring across the borderland, also across Texas. And it does take a lot of my time to make sure I watch and understand all of these particular topics that are just prevalent across cities, across communities, and I enjoy that. I don't know if those are more hobbies as opposed to just an academic hunger for knowing more. But I'm trying to think of just one last. Of course, my biggest hobby that I always make sure I mention is my dog. I love my golden retriever. Her name is Jon Avila, and she's turning 3 years old now. And this morning I got her a new toy. So we were playing with this new toy, and she just is pretty much everything that I focus on. That's why I'm such a homebody. No reason to leave the house if everything, at least in the sense of my social need, is there with my puppy.
We hope that you'll bring her one day here at the office.
That would be wonderful.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Yes.
Indy is so kind, and she's well trained. So thankfully, I think she would actually get
Just like me.
it would get well connected with the crew here, and I've always wanted to, and that's hopefully something we can plan together as a team.
Definitely.
Love that. Yes. So, Jon, thank you very much for sharing all of that to our audience. Now we want to get to know more about how your entrepreneurial journey began.
Yes. I've always, and I'm going as far back as into my youngest years, where I can remember that I first did a transaction among my peers. To just go slightly before that, my father has been an entrepreneur for a few decades now, and he specifically is in the real estate industry, as well as in the web domain industry as well. But for the most part, I saw it from the day-to-day, dare I say, hustle that my father had when I was very young. And this story does lead into my first transaction as a dare I say entrepreneur, but it was in early middle school, probably 7th grade, and I'm sure we could all go back to those nostalgic days of being in a small school with peers. My father actually encouraged me to go and start selling various types of candy, but not the American Hershey's or Kit Kats. I would be selling Mexican candy in the form of like chili, mangoes, lollipops, the little, what I would only refer to as the chili bolitas. There's also puparindos. I think that's, or not that, but it's for the most part, in the early 7th grade, my father said, I'm going to make sure that you have wholesale product, as in you bought in a large quantity. And my job as an individual, as a boy, to make my allowance, was to go and to sell to my peers at different prices, at different bundles, at different kind of customer segments, in who and what would buy how much. And this is all kids basically gathering money from their parents to be able to buy Mexican candy, because of course they didn't have that in middle school. So I began in that transaction. And in fact, I got in trouble a few times with the teachers, and also the teachers would purchase candy as well back in those days too. So I was always, in the sense of early middle school, curious about this transaction that would occur between hands. At the same time, I discovered my interest in marine science, which is what I ended up pursuing my first few semesters at UT Austin under marine science. And I figured that wasn't my pathway in the long run. But that was where I saw where there's value that can be had in the transaction. And also I benefit from having a little bit of cash in my pocket. And at the time, $40 to a 7th grader, $60, $100 was a lot for a kid. In fact, I remember what I did spend the money on eventually was a fish tank for my room. So the money went into an interest of mine that was a high level, and this is throughout the life of VR, AR, and mixed reality that I deal with now. I have a tendency to collect the cash and then spend it on a new thing, whether a technology or in this case a fish tank, and try to learn the ins and outs of XYZ type of new thing. It's something I've begun to realize is very consistent. In high school, Mexican candy, I thought I could do the same thing, but they were a little bit more concerned on a child selling to their peers. Instead, I discovered something called eBay. And eBay at the time was in the content of those bid wars, which still occur today. But at the time, I saw a very high interest and high appetite for certain type, amongst my peers, for certain type of plushies. And those plushies specifically were from Nintendo's brand Pokemon. And so instead of selling Mexican candy in high school, again, I did get a part-time job at Sonic in high school, Sonic Car Hop. The plushies that I would sell were Pokemon plushies that my peers would enjoy, and I was also make enough money to give some of my closest peers just free items. And I would sell these eBay purchased probably close to $2 items for close to $10 to $15 to my peers. And I would see, based on this concept of marketing and branding, a joy that it brought to them to own something that is in a physical form of an interest that they have. It was where I really begun to understand what value it means to the consumer, and how consumers, they don't have they don't care how that product was brought to them. They just care about a price. And then if there's enough value in their hearts for whether it's a little Pokemon Gengar or a Pokemon Charizard, they put enough value to that marketing and brand that they will be willing to purchase at a higher margin. And that's where I was really surprised, because I mean, as a high school student, I was making good margins if buying at cost of less than $2, which also allowed me to provide a lot of gifts to my friends too. That's something that I do see still to this day, where this idea of promoting the free market, I have an opportunity to hopefully find good deals for my peers and find opportunities where the market caters to bundles and such, because knowing how that emotional transaction is made, there are ways that negotiations can occur to where we as a business owner don't heed to so much leverage if we understand the economics and the underlying market of it. So that was high school, and then once leaving high school, I went for my undergraduate at UT Austin for marine science, and that was where I encountered my first big failure, where I thought for the longest time throughout middle and high school I was a science nerd. I did science fairs specifically on marine science, and I went to competitions in regards to that, and I thought I was living the dream by now finally studying marine science in Port Aransas, Texas, under the Marine Science Institute of UT Austin. But to keep that story short, I eventually decided that business was going to be my degree plan, which is also why, if anyone here was watching as a student, I always like to highlight this understanding and how the process works of changing your major, and how it's okay if there's an interest that you thought was completely the journey and pathway moving forward in your youth. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be our decision, and not to get too hung up on it, because quite frankly, I love business. I actually both love marine science and business. It's just that when I was a marine scientist, I did end up discovering that I should just focus on what I learned from my father, this idea of transaction, which was traditional business and also small to mid-sized business. My father always worked for himself, also worked as a teacher, but he never really worked in a large corporation that a lot of individuals have experience in. And I've worked several types of jobs, all I would say 80 to 90% of which have been in a small business. So I really can't see myself outside of a traditional entrepreneurial pathway due to a level of, corporate hesitancy in joining large corporations. Then again, with nice healthcare insurance packages, it's been an internal turmoil of doing my own thing or becoming that corporate entrepreneur, dare I say. But it's something that even now, as I go through this MBA, I struggle with, and I question day to day on whether or not I'm going to pursue that business or that idea, or if I'm going to try and find a nice comfy gig and start somewhere. So it's still that's another thing. Again, if you're a student and you're wondering the same thing, it's a very common juggle and balance that each individual has to take on their own.
I love, if there's three things that I would love to highlight about your answer is, I know that your parents taught you or introduce you with the entrepreneurship field. Like if they give you the resources and the tools, as your father did with the Mexican candy, but they let you administrate all of the business side. So that was teaching you since from a very young age to be mature enough to know what the value of money is, the value of work, the amount of effort that you have to put for a project, as small as it is to sell candy when you were a child.
Yeah,
that's amazing. The second thing you mentioned, that changing your major was a failure. I don't think so, John. I think that was your first introduction with your other successful path, which is business. So I don't think that was a failure. I think I'm a fan of yours. You know that we're office neighbors and we always talk and everything. So I really look up to you as an inspiration. And the third thing is that advice that you're giving to students, that if you happen to enroll for a major and you find out that's not for you, it's okay if you find out in your senior year, in your junior, freshman, it doesn't matter. You can always change your career. That's also important. Just talk to your advisor, look inside of you to see which things are you good at, just like you are good in business. And you can find another successful path for your life, just as you did. So a little bird told me that you used to work in the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship. So I would like to know what that center is and what you learned there.
Of course. And before we get into the Wolf Center, I do want to make sure I remember that it wasn't just my father, who instilled this entrepreneurial acumen in regards to the transaction. My mother helped understand the people aspect of it.
Yes.
And that's what I'm realizing now in the MBA. People come first in any kind of business, in any kind of transaction. And my mother has more of that heart, and they work together on their venture as realtors. And that's where I always think that I'm a blend of both of those, the transactional aspect and the people aspect. But I always want to make sure I mention that my mother was very important in the development, even now to this day, of what I think a good businessman should be. So regarding the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship, I did wear this emblem from my younger days of being an undergraduate student at the University of Houston for the Wolf Center of Entrepreneurship. As I mentioned, it's a 3-semester competitive program that only accepts 36 to 40 students per year. And I had tried 1 year for the Wolf Center, and I didn't get in. It's a competitive application process to where we need to make a video, write summaries, go through multiple interviews at the undergraduate level to even be accepted to go through this program. And there were individuals in our program who did not make it through the entire 3 semesters. And so being a rigorous, and I want to make sure that I say this statistic right, and I've never really shared this statistic because I think it's just kind of trying to polish the metal. The Wolf Center, for at least the undergraduate level, based on Princeton Review, has been for the past years, either third, second, or first in teaching entrepreneurship to young students, again, at the undergraduate level. And so being one of the top 3 ranking Princeton Review colleges for that, when I was looking to see what I wanted to do with my life, knowing that my marine science career path was questionable at best, I did intend to go to UH specifically for the Wolf Center, and I did not make it the first year that I applied, but I did make it the second year. And that's kind of what the Wolf Center wants to create amongst their students, which is that persistence and tenacity that an entrepreneur should or could possess. And I can safely say with certainty, the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship does instill students with that confidence for starting their own business or working in corporate entrepreneurship, whatever the path may be, specifically due to various projects that they have. One, which is IP teams, which is intellectual property, where they would bundle 7 of the 40 students together onto a team, average 7, 6 to 7, to take intellectual property that the University of Houston is creating and to attempt to commercialize it among the free market for the inventors at UH and professors. And that experience, we had a whole competition where we had to stand up, present, and try to compete against our peers as to who's going to win first place. Our team got 4th out of about 7 teams. So long story short, it was a tough process, but it was one that helped instill a sense of adaptable skill sets among a industry that we weren't necessarily fans of or comfortable with, but we were ready to do the right market research, do the right customer segmentations, and present to our peers, as well as an auditorium full of professors and judges, that this business has a foundation. It has a commercial viable pathway into the free market. A lot of times those projects did end up closing there after the presentation. But what I do find is that the individuals after me, or still the students, they had the privilege of getting a NASA IP technology. And so it rebranded as NASA IP. And so if anyone is interested in the Wolf Center now, there's a good chance that even today they still have NASA IP projects where they get this really cool high-tech technology, because NASA is right there in Houston, Texas, and they're able to see if there's a commercial viable pathway for that technology. So very cool stuff that they do there. But the Wolf Center also has what I personally coined as one of my biggest learning moments at this undergraduate level, which is the Wolf Fest Food Festival, where we plan over the course of a semester a large festival that happens in the center of campus, and our goal is through nonprofit donation as well as through profit that we would earn through the transaction of the food. We would basically, again, enter another competition with our peers. And I can say with mild certainty that my team and I had the privilege of getting whether first or second place at the Wolf Fest event because we had a wonderful nonprofit donation from Okra Bar, which is a fun story of making sure that nonprofits benefit from the community, where we had to put in a lot of effort to coerce individuals to find the University of Houston Wolf Center Wolf Fest team, the chosen nonprofit to receive this donation. It was around $20,000, that one donation, and then we got donations from others, as well as our food that we were selling. I don't know if you all have indulged in crawfish before, but it is a delectable meal in Houston, Texas. And it only happens seasonally. So we were right at the correct season for crawfish, and we were selling crawfish with a company, a local food company called the Crawfish Shack. And they actually donated all of the crawfish to us. So everything that we sold, we got profit. For the most part, we streamlined our operations well enough to succeed and to win first place in this competition. And it wasn't because of...
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. But I can safely say that the team that was there more so carried me than I carried them. Mainly because I was still discovering my own realm and expression of leadership. And I can safely say that in that WolfFest team, I was developing as a leader. And I still now need to develop as a leader, but even more so back then, to where I may have fumbled on some of the traditional leadership qualities that we would see in those individuals that we look up to. But that event, the reason why I say it's my most learning, the event where I learned the most, is because of the fact that I learned where my weaknesses were in my leadership style. And that was because every so often, on a milestone basis, we would get personal reviews from our peers, from my team, as to what we could do right, what we could do right, and what we did do right. And a lot of the times I would get heavy review as to the type of, because I was supposed to be the lead. I was supposed to be the one leading the charge. And after that, and again, I attempted to bring more in the short time that we had that WolfFest team. But because of all that realization, I want to think that today I'm slightly better at being able to create a plan, execute on a plan, find individuals who have like-minded interests who are ready to start an entrepreneurial venture. And that's where I think it goes back to my mother, where people comes first. And that's the one thing that I really did try back in that day, which is to make sure I developed that people connection for a hoorah to have a project done. There's what Brene Brown, who's a university professor, or the University of Houston professor, and also UT now. There's a common term that she's helped coin, which is employee embeddedness, which means that we as employees do seek a sense of identity with our leadership. And if there's a lack of identity, it does overall deter the effectiveness of that team and that group. And embeddedness is almost coined in an emotional sense, because we crave to be close to our mentors and our leaders. But it is to a point where if that's not in a support, it's difficult for people to have that embeddedness in their projects. And that's kind of where I've tried to, in any groups or projects that I put together, develop a sense of commitment and embeddedness for the people that I look over. And again, that's also when I get into course sim time, because that's where I learned the most, the strong emotional pull that is working with the team, that they are choosing to be there for you.
Yes.
And that's where it gets into that very deep chasm of emotion. And that's why I still want to keep doing this, because I find myself drawn to that. drawn to that sense of greater importance over like what business can do. Business is not just, maybe this is where I learned from the past, it's not just the transaction. It's the making sure the individuals are either employees, customers, clients, whatever the case may be, that there is a positive, reaffirmed connection, emotional relationship connection. Yeah. And that's something, again, I still struggle with to develop. And I think everyone is developing that in their own capacity. But it's something that my professor, Ken Jones, who was with us during the Wolf Center time, Ken Jones and Dave Cook. Dave Cook was the heart. Ken Jones was the brain. He always, when I would meet with him at IHOP in one-on-one meetings, because that's how they connect, he always made sure to tell me that never lose that emotional pull, that emotional tie, the relationship aspect, because he noticed that it's basically what I run my life through. And he says, if I lost that, then it would be a version of myself that is different, and maybe where the transactional business aspect would be stronger. He said just not to lose the heart aspect.
That's
of
a
business.
great advice, and thank you so much, for sharing all the things that you learned at the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship.
Yep.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing with the audience as well, all the things that you learned. And hi, and if you're seeing us, we hope to someday you come here to the Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce, and we can collaborate. Now we have John here.
Yeah,
he has experience, but if someone there wants to come here and be a guest in our podcast, you have an invitation.
Oh yeah.
I also want to say that it's very impressive, like all of your trajectory within your entrepreneurial journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to, I really love that you mentioned that business is about connecting people, because that's truly what a business is. If you don't connect with your customer or anyone, like you're not going to sell.
Employees too.
Yes.
Yeah, that relationship is very important.
So I'm really happy that you mentioned that, and also that you mentioned about your persistency, because sometimes I know the audience might relate as well. Mm-hmm. You are super eager to try or to do something, and you go ahead and do it, and maybe you don't get it the first time, and you might be getting discouraged because of that. But thank you for mentioning your experience about persistency, because you didn't get it at the first time, but you did it the second time. So to all of you guys who want to do something and you didn't get it the first time, this is your sign to pursue it and continue doing it.
Be like John.
You will get it. Yes. Okay, John. So now we want to know more about your experience within core simulation and how Red Labs helped you.
That is a wonderful time in my life where similar to Studio G, that is running an accelerator, I had a wonderful opportunity to be a part of the Red Labs Accelerator at the University of Houston, who also works in tandem with OwlSpark, which is the Rice University's version of an accelerator, where similar to the Mike Loya Center, which is a 3-semester program, the Red Labs is a all-summer, 3-month, heavy involved, curriculum that follows the traditional I-Corps National Science Foundation curriculum. And I joined with 4 to 5 of my close friends from the University of Houston, most of which were computer scientists. And we attempted to create a virtual reality rehabilitation software utilizing at the time the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, where we would go and do customer interviews with local physical therapy and occupational therapy offices and identify if this new technology, this new software, coupled with software that we would build but utilize the hardware and the units to use, would basically, our value proposition was lower readmittance rates for those individuals who do at-home physical therapy, as well as to have data-tracked analytics behind the software regarding the success rate of their movements, as well as the range of movement, and that final coupled gamification aspect of it, make it entertaining for the individuals, make it open for a fun and joyful experience, so that way they take the drudgery of physical therapy out and make sure we capture those analytics, and those get sent to the physical therapy office, who then could reimburse with insurance companies. But that last part is where we fumbled, and that's where it was difficult for a small team to be able to enter into this FDA approval route. It's a whole process for medical devices and where we didn't have the capital or the capacity when it came to units that we were moving to be able to sustain those costs. So which is why we ended up closing the company. We did try for about a year and a half to make partnerships with local healthcare providers and healthcare hospitals like that was the side one. It was Houston Methodist, Baylor College of Medicine, and another. I'm trying to remember the last one. But for the most part, we would just be TIRR, Texas Institute of Rehab, and I forget the rest of it. But for the long story short, we tried and we did all the things that we thought could work, and the business did end up showing signs of having to do a shutdown. So I had to go through the option of doing the formal shutdown in around 2017 in order to make sure that we weren't going to be hemorrhaging any extra money, and that way the gentleman also had a chance to find other occupations. That in itself was a learning moment, but also one where I was a CEO. I had the responsibility of a team, and I think even now that moment has shaped me forever to make sure that I'm trying to make sure my team is taken care of. And I did in that time. I tried my best, but I did have to make that hard decision to do a shutdown, which is hard for any entrepreneur.
Now that you mentioned that these experiences has shaped you in a way, I've been waiting the whole episode to ask you how does the Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce has helped you in your journey to move forward?
Yeah, Mike Loya Center has been, I knew, again, similar to going to the University of Houston and I choosing exactly what I want to go do. I knew after the pandemic was lightening up ever so slightly, I wanted to pursue a master's, and I looked to see what were the facilities and institutions that promoted entrepreneurship, because that was all I knew back in the time. And then I found the Mike Loya Center, and actually, this is funny because me and I know this individual. I did apply once, and I didn't hear anything back, and so I applied again to make sure. To make sure that they knew that my application was in, and I would make sure that because I knew I wanted to be a part of the center, because promoting an independency of your own business and fulfilling what the market promotes, which is innovation and new players to be able to make a living and earn a paycheck here in the free market. Entrepreneurship caters to that to the nth degree, and especially. I mean, I'm born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and my pursuit moving forward involves a more geographically focused entrepreneurial benefit to the community. So as a result, when I saw MBA, UTEP, great, I love El Paso, I want to be a part of that. And then I see Mike Loya Center promotes entrepreneurship, great, I want to pair up with those individuals that are promoting entrepreneurial acumen here in the university. And it's been over a year now that I've been here at the center.
And here you are in an entrepreneurship podcast.
Yeah, and I get to teach entrepreneurial classes and business essentials to different segments of students. I have an opportunity to work with various other projects regarding our professional fellows. Me and I have worked together on the previous reiterations of the podcast to interview local entrepreneurs. Dia de los Muertos pitch competition. Where
if you think that you know him from somewhere, he used to be the host in the whole first season.
Back in the day.
So that's what you seem his face familiar from.
And overall, I mean, I'm happy, and again, in the people aspect, that I can go to a place where there are people who also have a interest in other students' development of that acumen. And it's really the team that I would want to be a part of. We've had some fellows arrive and then head out within a 2 to 3 month period, and nothing against them. But I knew that as soon as I would start the MBA, I wanted to stay with the Mike Loya Center all throughout the MBA, because I want to make sure that there's enough time to do something important for the university. And everything that is happening here for the Mind Your Business is definitely remnants or showing that there are. It's growing, and it's growing to a good and effective capacity to where we promote this ideology to the students. And I have you guys to thank for that, because I know that my normal podcasts were over 40 minutes long, and I know this one will probably be close to that time. But it's to the point where students are benefited from the actions that we do, and that's why I'm excited to be able to be your coworker, to be in this program. Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce will move forward thanks to the people that make it possible. That's all of us here. Mario behind the camera, and it's to a joy. It's I always want to make sure that this is viable, and then also that next time when I give a shot at my next venture, that what I would have learned here in the Mike Loya Center would make and also at the MBA, would make me more prepared to be able to be that CEO and leader again, which that's kind of my ultimatum goal. Which
Don't forget us.
No. and just the UTEP is a wonderful place for the academics and development of this, and I'm glad that we have us here to promote that. So overall, thank you guys for letting me be on the podcast again, and it's fun to be on the other side. And I think there are some closing remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, John, for your time. We're truly honored to have you here in this episode. Studio G, the Mike Loya Center for Innovation and Commerce, and Blackstone Launchpad wants to thank all of you, our listeners, for your constant support.
Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, but never forget to always mind your business.